Hello, my good friends, and thank you for continuing tuning in to these episodes on how I arrived into the real estate business. This is episode number 9. Continue to leave your comments, ask your questions, and most of all, subscribe so the episodes will come directly to you. And if you're having problems tuning in or logging in or subscribing, please call me at 510-253-8712. Now, on episode number 9, you remember after leaving you on episode number 8, I talked about a gentleman who was helping me, or who had helped me to work on my 1953 98 Oldsmobile. His name was Lloyd G. Madden Sr. He owned a gas station there located on the corner of 5th and McDonald. It was called the Madden Shell Station. But what I failed to mention was that a few years later, I met his son, Lloyd G. Madden Jr., and still today, we remain the best of friends. And after leaving also on episode number 5, I left you talking and singing about an old rendition of George Benson. Everything must change and nothing, absolutely nothing, remains the same. Well, let me tell you this. Prior to graduating from the Oakland Moeller Barber College, I met a man out of Oakland. His name was Otis Carter, and he was about to open up a barber shop called the Bowtie Barber Shop, located there at 513 McDonald Avenue. It was predicated upon me graduating. So after I graduated, I already had an established job, and I had 2 plans. One was to build upon the business that I had already built, cutting hair at home. And secondly, the plan was for me to get married the very next year, April the 5th, 1964. Well, let me tell you what happened. When we talk about everything must change and nothing remains the same, I had a plan. And that plan was to build upon the business that I had already built, cutting hair at home. I was absolutely shocked that that was not true. As a matter of fact, I lost over 99%, or at least 90% of all the business I had built cutting hair at home. And I didn't have a backup plan. But what had happened is that, look, I had contributed to the support of my family, cutting hair at home. I contributed to my support of my financial support through high school, cutting hair at home. I contributed to the total purchase of my first car, that 1953 98 Oldsmobile, cutting hair at home. I paid my entire tuition for barber college, cutting hair at home. And I had thought, I dreamt of being able to build upon this business that I had thought I built, cutting hair at home. And to find out that that was not so, I was hurt. I was frustrated. I cried like a baby. Yes, I'm not ashamed to tell it. Cried. And after 3 or 4 months of crying and feeling sorry for myself, it came very clear to me that that business that I had, which was only a block and a half away, that was not going to happen. And that I had to create another plan. And so this book that I'm holding up in front of you, The Art and Science of Barbering, this is the book that I use going through barber college. And we had to do a multitude of things in this book. Now, keep in mind, I had just graduated from a barber college. And this book meant so much to me. And I found out that this chapter, I'm going to share with you some chapters in this book, and it'll lead you to my next plan. One, this is absolutely the first book that had a chapter of salesmanship. Maybe you can see that at the top of the page, salesmanship. And I would like to read you in the very first paragraph. It reads, anyone who serves the public is necessarily some kind of a salesman. The barber not only sells services to the public, but it has something to sell extra beyond the haircut and the shave. These are services needed by the public. It is said that nothing, absolutely nothing, until something is sold. With that said, since I just graduated out of barber college, and I didn't have that business that I had depended upon, and I still wanted to keep that date of April the 5th, 1964, I see that I had to not only devise a new plan, but I had to work expeditiously to implement the plan. But how I decided, I just described to you, but in addition to the chapters in this book, one was a chapter talked about bones. Now, we didn't work on bones, but we had to identify the bones in the areas, some of the bones in the area that we would be working on from the neck to the top of the head. For instance, the frontal bone, the parietal bone, the occipital bone, the mandible bone, the maxilla bone. We had to be able to deal with things such as that had a presence on how the effect of the nourishment of the hair and the skin would be. We also had to study a chapter in the book about the circulatory system. We had to learn how the blood nourished the face, the skin, and the hair. We had to learn about the right and left ventricle, the left and right atrium, and how they work in the pumping of the blood to all parts of the body. We had to learn about some of the diseases. We had to learn how to recognize some of these diseases. For instance, pityriasis, different types of dandruff, alopecia, different type of baldness in the hair. We had to learn something about the sympathetic nervous system because it had a bearing on how the skin tone would be and the texture of the hair. We had to learn about muscles, learning that sagging muscles would create wrinkles. So with that said, I decided to get back into the book, and I wanted to specialize now. I wanted to learn and add 2 or 3 things that other barbers wasn't doing. That's what I thought about. At first I thought about, I had just studied and I'd done well in the theory. I'd done very good in the practical part, but I was excellent in the theory. So I decided to get back into this book and specialize in facials. So who would I use? I used my good father. My good father had just recovered from a mini stroke there, and he wasn't working anymore. And keep in mind, we were only a block and a half away from home. So with the facials, I wanted to be able to do this, and let me tell you this, and so forth. I have passed this on to my daughter and my granddaughter, facials. So after this pandemic is over, you will be able to come to Keone Rochelle's hair salon because they will specialize in facials. But now let me continue how I would do with my father. With my father, being in the chair, it was said that it was easier to get a customer if you already had one. So I would have my father in the chair. I would do his haircut 2 or 3 times a day using larger blades. They wouldn't be cutting off anything. And then I would lay him back into doing a facial. And I'm sitting in the front. I didn't have another client waiting. So let me tell you what I would do. I would start massaging right here with this circular motion here, increasing the blood supply to the head. And then on my father, I would start massaging around the orbicularis oculi, which is really meaning around the eye, up to the nasula, the dilator nasula, and the pursuers at the end of the nose. This helped keep the wrinkles all around in that area. And then I would massage all around the temporal here, and here we would vibrate. I got pretty good at vibrating without a vibrator, and right in this area. And then we would massage all around the zymatics and everything. I would do that. And then I would share it with all my other customers. Now, when my father got out of my chair, if I had another customer, I would sit him in the waiting area. And now he's waiting for a cut. We're trying everything, because keep in mind now, I have another date we didn't change, so I need to move. And then I didn't have to discover this. I already knew that I was a good barber. But at this time, I realized even then I wasn't a great barber and I had to get better. So I was already going around the corner to Gaines Barbershop, and Artie Ross was my favorite barber. So I would actually sit in Mr. Gaines' chair so I could watch Artie Ross cutting hair. I had to tighten this up, and the other area that I was working on getting better. So keep in mind, I was doing facials. Sometimes I would even do scalp manipulations, but I was doing facials, but I had to come up with something else that other barbers wasn't doing. And what I came to the conclusion that other barbers, they would not come on time. So I capitalized on that. I was working at that wheel factory. We had to be there at 9 o'clock. So I was used to getting up real early. But see, I had to build up this business because I had lost over 99% of my business. And now all the Dominoes, they remained faithful with me. And some of the others whose hair I was cutting, like Lil Wayne Minix, his brother Charles, and then even Riley Minix remained coming there as faithful customers. Leroy Walker and Lee Timmons. And later on, it was Joey McDonald became. So as I moved forward, doing these facials and working and getting there on time, that business started building. I also was able to cut John Stewart. At that time, Rose Manor Funeral Service was right there on Nevin, on 5th and Nevin, and not uptown on McDonald Avenue. And he would come in and talk. I would actually do facials on him. He was a mortician. He knew all about these things and everything. So he was very inspiring to me. As a matter of fact, they would even bring in Lil John, his son, there. So that was a great area, but I got to move. Now, it didn't work out that well. It wasn't moving fast enough. So one of my clients, he was so gracious, he helped me to get a part-time job at night, working for Diamond Janitorial Service. And the business started picking up. The business started picking up. Everything stayed on track. So I moved and I moved and I moved. Now what I want to do, I want to share more to what the motivating. What I learned is the power of the woman. That's what I learned, because the thing about it is what was motivating me to move like this. Now, some ambition, but one of the key things is I wanted to get married. And I used that in a positive sense. We used that. We decided that we would keep the date. because they understood also what was happening, that I left thinking I was going to build upon a business that I had already built, but it wasn't there. So I want to continue this on, but I want to bring in that motivating factor when I said the power of the woman. And I want to share with you more about her and what was motivating me, helping to motivate me to keep striving to stay focused on being successful in that particular business. But I want to thank you this time. God bless you. I want to see you again on episode number 10.